Welcome to Idea Citizen. Today we're talking about when cheap education comes at a high price. But does it? Enjoy my conversation with Jason Smallheer. You have an interesting topic around like hidden costs of cheap education, and I have questions. And I'll tell you this too,
Yeah,
Jason. I'm a bit skeptical going into this conversation, so I think like some of my questions are kind of gonna like go into that as well. But like I'm really
good. I told my wife I'm about to become the Edward Snowden of higher education. I'm gonna have to move to Russia or pick a country.
Well, hey, you know what? Hey, I think interesting conversations come with like discourse and like I wouldn't say polarizing thoughts. Like, I mean, I don't know how polarizing this is, but I am curious. I have questions. It's interesting. So let's start off with Jason. Like, can you uh can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure. My name is Jason Smallheer. I have been working in marketing, advertising, sales, and higher education for a little more than 30 years. I've been an adjunct professor for 9 at, here we go. I'm gonna pull back the wrapper. Columbia College in Central Missouri for 8, Southern New Hampshire University for about 4, and a couple of other schools as subject matter experts, sprinkled here and there, a year here, a year there, a course here, a year there, for during part of that 8-year span. As I was doing this, my wife was like, "Do you want people to know where you teach?" And I'm like, "Yeah." The opinions, and I'll say this, the opinions are my own, but I'm not saying anything that you can't look up online. It's just a matter of taking all these as ingredients, piecing them together, and then going, "You're kidding." That's the thing that's really going to be enlightened here today. So, no, everything's right there.
Yeah. Okay. So, hidden cost of cheap education. What in the world does that even mean?
It's funny because when you think of cheap, the first thing that comes to mind is like Timu, and no, we're not getting higher education or even quality education on Timu. When I use the word cheap, what I'm thinking about here and what I'm referring to is education that you focus on the cheap. Let's think about this for a second. When you get on television now, or if you're streaming TV because everybody's streaming something now, or you're listening to a podcast, or you're listening to something through your headphones, it's very easy to hear some kind of a marketing message, okay, marketing guy here, for higher education. University of Phoenix does this, Southern New Hampshire does this, other schools do this now. And the thing that they are focusing on, and it's a big deal for students now, is cost. And I'm saying this because one of my sons, he's 19, getting ready to go to school, and he's waffling on whether or not he wants to go to school, is the cost of education. And he's not thinking about the quality of his school, he's thinking about the cost of his school. And that's a sick thing. He's looking at whether or not he wants to go to school and where he goes to school based on the price tag. And the challenge that we're running into, and I'm going back to the focus on cheap education, is there are schools out right now who are focusing on the price P. I'm going to put on my marketing professor cap here,
Okay.
of the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. And schools are out pulling on people's emotions, saying, "We've got education. Oh, and by the way, it's cheap." One of the schools I've worked with says you can get a master's degree for $15,000. And people are going, "Wow, that's great. I can get a master's degree for $15,000. But that's like saying, "Hey, I've got a Mercedes Benz for you for $15,000. But how many of you have gone online and seen that picture of somebody saying, "Hey, I got my AirPods on Timu for $15," and you see that picture of what they get? It's horrifying, right? It's like an inflatable AirPod, or it's an AirPod the size of a pillow,
That's
right?
funny. Well, I guess okay, so well, let's back this up. Like, is there a reason why? I guess like, does quality and price actually need? So I understand like universities utilizing like cost savings or like low cost education as kind of a promotional tactic to get more students to come through.
Hmm.
Because let's be honest, I mean. price comes into it. It's like people have at any one point a finite amount of finances. Yes, you can go like get loans and everything, but like there's also obviously a big conversation around that. I guess then like the opposite of that though is that like can you, I guess, does is price a determinant of a good education? And I would venture to say no. Like I mean just
I
because like
agree with
you're,
you.
you know, I
Absolutely
mean,
not.
yeah.
Part of the argument can be you get what you pay for. Okay. Harvard University, and I've never been to Harvard, okay, is not going to offer a Harvard MBA for $15,000. And if Harvard said, here's a Harvard MBA for $15,000, we're probably going to scratch our head because of the perceived level of quality that Harvard has. And I'm going to go back to the Mercedes Benz. If Mercedes Benz said, here's a Mercedes Benz for $15,000, we're going to scratch our head because of the perceived value that Mercedes has. We're going to go, okay, what are you cutting back on? Does it not have leather seats? Does it not have airbags? And we're going to wonder. But when we come back to education, there's a certain segment of folks who are going, wow, a master's degree for $15,000. And forgive me for saying it like this, but to the uneducated folk who really don't know what's involved in education, they don't know what's missing.
So are you saying
And
you're
some of
getting a
this,
lesser quality of like education for a lower cost? Like are the, I guess like there's plenty of low cost universities around, and I think like just like
mm-hmm,
yourself, I mean, we don't know each other very well, but I know a number of people that have been are actually professors of practice or adjunct professors,
mm-hmm,
and they are highly skilled in their field, and they're actually going to teach at, it's not Harvard, it's not Yale, it's not an Ivy
right,
League. So like why, okay, like I guess they're get like, so there's access and in theory like good quality education provided by professionals that are good at what they do, but that the price part of it has the school does offer a low cost education, but
right.
I would venture to say that they are in fact getting a quality education. But
Okay,
what,
so
okay,
there's a
so
couple of
and I
ways
think
to
you were
look at
getting
this.
to, I think you were getting to it, you were going to say like you're missing something, so what are we missing here?
So you're unpacking a couple of things here, and I absolutely love it. So I want to put a pin in one segment because there is a substantial difference in what is taught at some schools. Okay, I'm an adjunct, which means I teach part time. I work full time in the areas in which I teach. I teach 11 different classes, mostly in business schools, anything from digital marketing, entrepreneurship, leadership, things of that nature. And then there are folks who teach full time at the same, at a variety of different schools or at this particular school, and they focus just on teaching and committees and all that stuff. The way I teach, the way they teach, and where they get their information, I get my information. Two different things. We're going to put a pin in that because that's going to come back here in a little bit.
Okay,
Hold on to
let's,
that. Okay, this is going to come back. Now, what I was getting to is what you do and what you don't get. The average student who sees a price tag of wow, an MBA for $15,000 versus dollars, what do you get? It comes down to, well, let's look at rigor, for example. Okay, one of the schools that I teach at, again, I'm part time. They say to me, Jason, here is your class roster. Boom, you've got 30 students. And then they say to me, because you're part time, we have designed the class for you. Okay, great. So here is your class, week 1, week 2. Okay, here is the book. They've picked the book for me. Here is your rubric, meaning here is the weekly assignments, and here's what the students need to do each week. And they need to meet these level of expectations. And expectation 1 is X. And if they meet this, it's an exceeds expectations. If it is this, it is a meets expectations, an average, and so on and so forth. So by default, I'm really just kind of sitting in a chair and I'm coaching. Now, I have the opportunity to give feedback, in which case I could say, Jackie, congratulations. You've done a superb job. You've exceeded expectations. And then it's my responsibility to pinpoint specifically what Jackie has done to exceed those expectations. On the flip side, I could say what you haven't done. That's where I come in as the professor to highlight those key points. But here's where some of that $15,000 is substantially different than that $115,000 expectation, is that I don't have the flexibility to craft a course that is relevant to today's real life world. Somebody that I don't know is doing it for me based on who knows what. So here's an example. I'm going to talk about branding for a minute. Okay. I work in branding every day. I work in marketing and advertising. I've got a coffee mug here in my hand, white coffee cup. The way I would brand this coffee cup if I were trying to sell it to somebody who drinks coffee or to somebody who doesn't drink coffee is different today than it was 5 years ago. But that class hasn't changed in 5 years. So I'm holding today's students to the same set of standards by virtue of a rubric that it was 5 years ago. But the way it's changed. But the way we do branding and marketing and advertising has changed. But those students are being taught something that's old.
But are the principles like are the principles like do you feel like the principles themselves, like the framework within marketing has changed from, 10 years ago? I mean, of course there's new things that have come into play, but it's like I think that there you started off this conversation with like the 4 Ps and everything, which are kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
benchmark of marketing, branding, whatnot. I think that the principles remain, and I think the manner in which potentially you teach some of those principles can vary over time.
Sure. So if I told you that the 4 Ps of marketing was a we'll call it a benchmark that originated in 1960, Jerome McCarthy, but it's changed over time to now have three more Ps. We now have 7 Ps of marketing. But this course that I okay, here we go, right? But this hasn't evolved in this class. There are 7 Ps of marketing, and that includes people, process, and physical evidence. But nobody's teaching that because the course hasn't evolved. So for $15,000, you're learning something that's 60 years old.
Okay.
Yet for $115,000, you're learning something that's new and current.
Well, okay,
So
so
you
as a
graduate.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you graduate and you're going to go into the workforce and you're going to be able to teach, you're going to be able to work in an environment average and teach and work in an environment and teach your clients and educate your clients on something that's 60 years old. Congratulations. You now have an irrelevant degree on day one of your new job.
Oh God, that's
How does that feel?
I mean
$15,000 well spent.
you're like boom.
Ouch.
Oh man. Okay. Okay, so are you saying that like at universities that have that, say aren't like value educations, are you saying that there is the flexibility and the commitment to evolving kind of education strategies to serve the students based on current situations?
I'm saying that education is a business,
I completely
like
agree with you. Yes.
religion is a business. But education, and again, I've got family members who are full-time professors at other universities, and one of their main focuses is getting students. And they sit in meetings all the time and they're talking about increasing enrollment, increasing enrollment. As an adjunct,
Right.
I'm not held to that standard. Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody hands me students. But again, they are focused, these schools, all schools are focused on getting students. And they're focused on getting butts and seats. And they're focused on churning students through the process, not holding students back. We'll talk more about that in a moment. It's gonna make your skin crawl. But they are focused on getting students in, teaching students what they can. They do modify the classes. I'll tell you, I've talked with some folks who are my peers who've changed and modified the courses.
Hmm.
But what they don't do on a regular basis is focus on ways to adjust the class on the regular. This is where some of the full-time professors have an advantage because they can adjust their courses because this is what they do full-time to make these adjustments. A lot of these schools who are focusing on just cranking out students, hey, we've got a $15,000, an $18,000, a $10,000 education, are trying to appeal to somebody who might be on the treadmill right now. Welcome to a new year. See an opportunity for an education, get off the treadmill or apply on your phone, fill out an application. Next thing you know, you're starting a class on Friday. You start a class this weekend, get an MBA by this time next year. They're learning stuff, but they're being told that they're going to get an education for very little money. What they're not being told is how valuable that education is, how practical that education is, and how that education is going to be perceived and looked at by the real world. That's where the difference is. And that's when people are saying, okay, so I've got my MBA from insert school here, insert diploma mill, call it what you want,
Diploma
but
mill.
am I able to do Well, I've been told that, I've been told, Jason, you work for a diploma mill. But I'll tell you, I've got some students who work their butts off and they work hard. And I've got some students who are just phoning it in. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this is somebody who's just trying to buy 3 letters at the end of their signature block. And when I sit here and try to hold a student to a certain set of standards, like citing their work, but my rubric says a student who doesn't cite their work can still get a 90 because we're just trying to get students through the program. I go, whoa, wait a minute. Harvard in no way, shape, or form would let a student get through an MBA program without citing their work. No way.
I mean, I realize we're using Harvard kind of, as a benchmark for
Pick a
like Ivy.
school.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I
I went to
mean,
Southern Illinois for my undergraduate
no,
work.
fair.
There
Like
is
I
no
also,
way.
I also just, I question if anything, a number of things like regarding like Ivy Leagues and everything. And like not that I have like the most knowledge on this topic, but it's like I don't know if anybody's doing it as well as they could. And I don't know if the system that that we're currently operating within really like provides like the flexibility to do it in the
And
way
you're
that
right. Harvard's the top echelon. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to use, I did my undergraduate work many, many years ago, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. Go Salukis. Okay.
I
I
have a
was an
number of friends
average
that
high
went
school
there.
student. Very good. We majored in beer. I majored in journalism. Okay, great journalism school. I went to school there because I was an average student. I'm not going to lie. I screwed around my freshman year of high school and I got C's. It was very hard for me to get a admission into a top tier university because I did not have A's and B's. I did my last 3 years of high school, but I had enough C's in my freshman year that it wasn't going to raise my GPA. I got into Southern Illinois, got my booty in gear. Don't get me wrong, Southern Illinois is a great school. If I went through my undergrads in the 1990s and I turned it, the internet wasn't what it is now, but I turned in a paper without sources, my professors would have flunked me. They would
Oh
have
yeah.
sent me right back to Florida, which is where I lived at the time. I started my schooling in Illinois. My family moved to Florida. My dad was a military man. They would have said, no way. I have students who turn in papers right now. No joke. These are master's students, which means they got through their undergrad. I am not making this up, who do not cite sources. I have one student who actually said empirical evidence. Really? He said common sense. That's his sources. Oh, well, great. I can't wait for the student to go to their boss to make $1 billion decision as an MBA to say, yeah, it's common sense. I had another student tell me, who's not on Instagram? That was his source. Who's not on Instagram was written on his bibliography. Are you telling me that this student is ready for the world? This is a future MBA, but when I dock students for this, they still get a 90? Are you kidding me?
Well, I realize that
We
you're
have
gonna
a problem with
I
education.
really, yeah, I think, and I want to make the distinction that, like, I think there's challenges for teachers and educators. So, like, that's, I feel like a whole
Yes,
nother
we do.
conversation. But, like, so for this conversation, like, let's focus on the student and everything. But, like, with the students, like, what do you feel like your role of just education, period, is in a student's life? Because we just talked about like 4 P's and there's actually seven and everything. Like, at what point is it, hey, it's the education or the education system, like, hey, we're giving you a framework, we're giving you like, a moose bouche of like a little bit of, all this
Yeah.
information, and ultimately then we're going to set you off and it's up to you, say, follow your passions, interests, or whatever, to like go explore this further. I anticipate that part of it is like, hey, from a teacher, it's like, here's the framework, here's, this is what I need to be, you guys are going to be graded on and everything in this course, like per what you've spoken to. But there's so much more information out there, and like, and point them in that direction where you're not necessarily going into detail about it. So
Mhm.
I guess, what is, in your opinion, like, what is the role of the educator and the education system?
Absolutely. Our role is to give them the basic tools and understanding so that they can graduate and be relevant on day one. They're not going to know everything. Now, again, this is not medicine. Medicine's a bit different. Okay. Medicine is probably the big outlier here. Okay. And maybe aviation. But for my particular world in business, okay, I need a student to graduate and understand the basic shell of how to do business, how to solve problems, but to also be relevant on day one. If I have a student who understands the basic idea on search engine optimization, they can learn the rest of that because that field changes all the
Yeah.
time. Branding, okay? They need to understand the basic shell of what branding is today, but the concepts change over time. If I make them an expert today, that is fantastic, but in 6 months, it doesn't matter. So again, the big piece is giving them the ability, the wherewithal, and the know-how on not only on how to be relevant today, but how to do the research so that they stay relevant tomorrow and throughout their career. And that's one of the pieces that's missing is a lot of today's students don't know how to do that in-depth research component on how to stay relevant. They think that a lot of the answers are on TikTok and it's not, or it's on a blog post and it's not. If
I
I
completely
finish
agree
off this
with you.
podcast, drink a fifth of vodka, and then make a blog post, I don't know what I'm writing, but somebody may very well cite that. So our students need to understand where to gather that information, find those resources, so that if in 6 months Jackie says, hey, I want to find out how to talk to dog food owners or dog owners on how to find organic dog food and where they can find it in the state of Nebraska. It may seem kind of broad, but the right student will know how to market that type of product to a certain segment of audience.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I agree. And you know what? And I want to echo your point, and I completely agree with you. Like, there's the how do I say this? It's like there's so much information out there. Everybody is entitled to their opinion and everything, but
Mhm.
if you also just look like one level deep, like little, like you don't even have to go very, like to your point, yeah. Listeners, Jason's doing like a tiny, like an inch with his fingers, but yeah, exactly. It's like if you just question just something at a very basic level, so many things unravel. But the thing,
Right.
unfortunately, is that like a lot of, I mean, honestly, my head actually goes to like Joe Rogan and like that podcast.
Right.
But it's like the amount of information and people speaking from some degree of authority and everything. And if you look them up, go Google, go look on any of your browser of choice. Like you quickly learn that like the information is the speaker is full of shit. The information
Right.
holds no water. And so to your point, like, I do agree with you that like if we're taking, say, like, composing a paper based on TikTok knowledge or common knowledge, or then you're like, like, no, like if anything, as a professor, you're like, I'm failing you because I am like, what I'm trying to do is like teach you how to search uh, and audits things for accuracy and everything. It's not just about the
Absolutely.
information. So, like, well, and let me ask you this: do you feel like so? I've been at a place in my life where I've been curious about looking into an MBA. So let's just I was speaking with UCLA, or looking into that program. I forgot how much it was. I think it was like $180,000 or something. I also
Hmm.
was looking at like UC Davis for an online MBA, and jury's out on online MBA, like just the value of it and everything. But
Right.
at least from the people that I spoke with, due to the network, that came in, I think it was like just short, like just right around $100,000. And then to your
Right.
point, there are plenty of online MBA options. And I haven't seen an in-person one that was super inexpensive, but like to your point, like these things are coming in at like 15, $30,000, whatnot. MBA by virtue is it's discretionary. It's like you definitely don't need
Hmm.
it. Like it's, I mean, you don't
Right.
need, I mean, it's up to you if somebody needs any of it at any point, but I mean that's a whole
Correct.
nother
Correct.
conversation. But like it has turned into like this money making, it's a business at the end of the day.
Sure
It's
has.
it's churned these people out, it's get them out into the world and pass them. Like you do not, especially at like any sort of continuing education, it does not behoove a university to hold people back, keep them in the system. It behooves them to move them out because otherwise they just
Sure
leave.
does.
Do you feel like, you've taught at a number of different institutions. So do you feel like there's a different quality of student at the end of the day, that like, or
Yeah.
the atmosphere of like, say, one of your top 50 schools versus like one of your value school opportunities? Like what does that look like?
And as I sit here, bitching about some of the things that as I was talking about research and sourcing, first of all, if you fill my room here with professors, we're all going to bitch about some of the same things. So let me just clear the air there. Most students want to put in the work, especially when you're talking about higher education, because most students want to be there. Now, there are some students who are told if you get a degree, you're going to get the thing. You're going to get the job. You're going to get the promotion. You're going to get the thing, whatever that is. But when you're talking about an MBA, some people are told that, hey, your career is going to advance. You're going to get a six-figure salary. Now, again, there's also the gurus online that are taking pictures of themselves on a rented Mercedes or in front of somebody else's private jet, or, they're sitting in somebody else's dress, talking about making $1 million and they never got a degree. Get rid of those outliers. Most students want to do the work, and they're choosing to do the right thing. There are probably that 10 to 20%. Let's do the 80-20
80/20.
rule here. All right. 80% of my headaches come from 20% of my students. And those are the students that want to buy themselves an MBA, buy themselves a signature block, that don't want to do the work. And I'm going to give you an example. About a year ago, I had the opportunity to be part of a group of professors that were teaching MBAs how to do research. It was very humbling to have the opportunity to do this. And we met every week for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. And we were showing students how to use an online library. And that's hard because most people, again, you get on Google and you type up, ask it a question, or now you can use AI, and who knows what you're going to get. Different discussion, whole other podcast, right? But they don't dig deep enough. So again, they're looking at whatever comes up, and that's the answer. So I'm working on teaching these students on how to find the good information, how to cite things. And the first question I got, I still can't believe this, but this is just to paint the picture. The student didn't ask about how to do the research. The student said, well, how do you know if I'm really doing the research? Which the real question they were asking me was, I don't plan on doing the research. How can
How
I
do I?
not get caught?
Yeah.
That's the question they're really asking me. And I just sat there and said, so you're going to spend $15,000, $20,000 of your money or somebody
And your
else's
time,
money.
and your time.
Let's go there. Your time is valuable. My time is valuable. And your first question is, how do I know whether or not you're faking it? So again, 80% of my headaches. So there are students that just don't want to do the work. To which my advice is just don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't.
Well,
Tell your boss who's going to give you tuition reimbursement that you have no interest in actually doing the work.
because rather quickly, like with any sort of questioning and getting into the real world, or, getting into a job, like it's going to be very obvious that you didn't do the work. It will
Clearly.
show immediately.
And it's just that obvious. And even if you said that, oh, I did the research, you can see by the quality of work that you didn't do it. And again, we as educators can see when AI did the work for you. We can. And again, I teach students. I have a digital marketing class where I actually require students to use AI. I have a project where I have them use a minimum of 5 sources, and AI has to be 2 of them because I want them to understand how to use it. Now, again, this class wasn't doing this 3 years ago because AI wasn't the thing 3 years ago. But the point is, a lot of these students don't understand that if they cheat the system now, they're only going to hurt themselves in 3 years when their boss says, Jackie, I've got this major project for you to lead. It's $1 billion project. You're our MBA, go get it. And Jackie's going to go in there and go, oh dear God, I don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you fake your way through that? I mean, this is your job at stake. This is your team's job at stake. This is probably your company's future at stake. And what are you going to say? I can't do it because I fudged my way through my MBA. Well, nobody's going to say that. But because I had a bad rubric and because the worst I could give you was an A minus because you didn't source your work, I had to push you through the system. Am I at fault?
A
I
little
mean,
bit.
I had to put my name on you. Yeah, I am. And they're going to say, Professor Smallheer, you passed Jackie. And I'm going to say, yeah, I had to. I gave her a 0 on her sourcing and I gave her an average on her rest of her work, but she got an A minus because that's what the rubric held me to. So really,
Yeah.
this comes down to Jackie didn't want to do the work. Jason held her to the standards that I'm required to hold her to by the rubric that I'm given by ABC School, that just wanted to get as many students in the door as possible because it's a business and they want students to go to their school instead of the other school that's trying to get as many students in the door as possible. It's almost like automotive sales.
Well, let
You
me
know, hey, I've got a Hyundai, you have a Hyundai.
if like this is the thing, it's like if somebody wants to cheat the system, they're going to cheat the system. I think that, like,
Sure they
whatever.
are.
It's like, I mean, going back to 80/20 rule and everything. It's like, do you feel like, on a day-to-day basis, do you feel like you are like, and I know we're talking about cheap education, but you personally, like, are you are you teaching to the 20% of your classes, like the people that are actually invested in the process and learning and then ultimately taking,
But yeah,
because like, I mean, like, what are you, like, are you going to appeal to the lowest common denominator or the highest common denominator? Like,
all
where do
right, let
you
me let
land?
me unpack that. Yeah, unpack that. And in all sincerity, I do teach to that 20%, but when that 20% keeps shutting me down, and week after week, when I'm giving the same feedback, you're not citing work, this is what I need, and they just flat out ignore me,
Then that's not the twenty
it's
percent
abundant.
then. Then maybe.
That's not the 20% that's interested in learning. So
Yeah.
I have to be completely
Okay, so
transparent. My attention,
let's go even. Okay, so let's go 5%. Maybe it's like 95.5%. Like, do you teach the like, because there has to be a okay, and tell me if I'm crazy, or like, are we just like at a different place in life today? But like, there, I'm sure, or at least I would like to believe that there is a student that cites their work, is doing the work and everything. Like, do you teach to them? Because for me, like, your students that, like, you're speaking about, like, not citing their work and everything, like, that to me falls into that 80%. So, um,
yeah,
okay, then I guess then I'll rephrase my question again. Like, do you teach then to your 5% or the 95%?
I teach to everybody, and I'm gonna emphasize this. I feel a lot better about the effort I put towards that 95%, but I get so damn pissed when that 5% is trying to work the system. If I wasn't teaching to them, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't. Otherwise, when I have that person who just says, "Well, how do you know if I'm working the system?" I'd say, "Go ahead, do what you want. I don't give a damn." I don't say that. And in all sincerity, I do not believe there is any professor who says, "Do what you want. I don't give a damn." Because we voluntarily, and again, I'm gonna take all professors, both full and part-time, we do not willingly take a crap salary to work ridiculous hours to have somebody crap on us. We don't.
Nobody
Same
does.
thing
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
for
yeah.
public school teachers, okay? There's an element of caring there. But I have to say to that student, whether it's a high school student, a grade school student, or in this case, we're talking about higher ed, who says, "How do you know?" I weep for them because their future, their professional future, is very, very dim. And the sad thing is I can do nothing for them. That's the student who one day is going to reach out and say, "Can you help me with a job or a paper or a reference or something?" And I'm going to have to say no.
Okay.
And that hurts.
Yeah.
So I will teach to that student, but when it comes back and they need that help, that's the student I have to say no to, and I have to give them the reason why. And that
So, like,
hurts.
at the end of the day, you are teaching to, these are adults at the end of the day. Like, you're,
Yes.
you are. So, I guess my question, it's like, how, because where am I gonna go with this? This might be, I'm gonna ramble a little bit.
No, go for it.
um, I where am I going with this? Because I feel like okay, so say like a student like asks like, how can you tell if I'm cheating, or like, continue to resist kind of the citations. I guess there's
Mhm.
twofold. It's what is okay, like why are you pressing on citations? And let's start there, and then I feel like there's more to add.
Okay. So, as an MBA, the basis for a master student is deep research. So, if you decide to get an MBA, one of the big pieces of your degree is finding a stance on something, okay, and doing deep, meaningful research to either defend or disprove your theory.
Yeah,
Okay.
becoming an
So
expert, a real expert.
that's why I have such a big stance on research. When a student says, well, come on, man, who's not on Instagram? That's not deep, meaningful research. That's an opinion. Okay. So here's an example. If your angle is I'm going to do Instagram marketing and I'm your CEO and I say, Jackie, why should we market on Instagram? And you say, come on, man, who's not on Instagram? Am I going to say, you're right, here's $1 billion, go do it? Absolutely not. But if you say, come on, man, who's not on Instagram? Here's the data. You're right.
Yeah,
Take my money. There's a way to do it.
I
Okay.
agree. I agree. I've even, I mean, I guess the story that comes to mind for me is I actually I was interviewing somebody actually for, like, it was like an event manager role. And they also said they ended up like interjecting with like, oh, and I could also, do social media, where like I'm a social media expert. I was like, well, let's jump into that a little bit. I'm like, what is being an expert in social media? And this was a number of years ago, but I was like, what does that mean? It was interesting because this person felt that because they had been an active user of social media, that they were by default a social media expert. And
Sure.
I was like, well, that's not quite it from, I will say that's not quite it from like a business perspective, like from like data analytics and everything, and like kind of just understanding like trends. I was like, yeah, maybe you can like post some stuff, but I'm like, that's far from an expert. But like, so to your point, like that is a response that I have received.
Right.
And I don't think that all the onus should be on professors. I don't think all the onus should be on like employers. I don't think like all the onus should even like be on students or like, new grads. So my question to you is that like, if do you feel like there's going to be like a change in the quality of work coming up if you're seeing like these like constant trends, or is there just like this opportunity for somebody based on whatever education avenue they're going for, like, high end or like inexpensive, that like those people that like to like properly go through the rigor, like to incentivize them, or at least to encourage them in a manner like it is your choice ultimately, like what you choose to do with the education. Like you could take a cheap education and 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 build it into something amazing, and you could also take
Yes, you
like an
can.
expensive education and demolish it. So like these people that like, I would venture to say that the people that are going through like the rigor of doing the work and everything are going to be like the future leaders of corporate America, if anything, because like
Mhm.
they have they have this varied expertise. And I guess, I don't know, again, this kind of goes back to
No,
like the 80/20 world. It's like, like, how do you incentivize this, your students and everything, or at least because I don't think they fully get the implications of what they are doing or not doing.
there's a couple of ways to look at this. So bear with me. First of all, I'm not going to put all the onus on the student. In all fairness, there are some professors who just flat fuck can't teach. Okay, there are some professors that just phone it in, that just want to do research. They don't want to teach. They want to get their grants from NASA or whoever it is, and they have no desire to be in the classroom. They're there. They know who they are. And if they're listening right now, shame on you. Okay. Those professors are out there. And there are students in those classrooms who want to learn, and the professor wants nothing to do with it. So, that being the case, it is a 50-50 relationship. On day one of any class, both a live class, both an on or an online class, one of the first things we do, and I do this through video, is we have a conversation where we go over our syllabus. Okay. That syllabus where we talk about everything we're going to do that term is a contract. And that is where the professor outlines everything they are going to be responsible for giving to that student and the expectations they are holding the student to for the next 8, 10, 16 weeks of that term. By the student staying in that class, they are agreeing to those expectations. Now we have a binding contract. If the student is not going to agree to those expectations, coming to class, doing the homework, doing the paper, doing the citations, drop the class. If the professor is not going to live up to the expectations that they write in their syllabus, or if they are doing an online class from a big school, where it's written for you, like in Southern New Hampshire, they're written for me. But if I record a video and I do not back up that syllabus and I have no intention of doing what that syllabus says, then I should not take that class. And I should tell the university, hey, I'm not going to teach that class because I don't live up to those expectations. And if I do, that is fraud on my part. Okay. I know I'm being over dramatic, but that's my responsibility. I don't do that. So again, we have a contract. So now, if the university is going to just, again, focus on come to our school, we just want you as a student, and they're going to put together a class, and it is going to ill prepare a student to function with relevancy in the workplace, then that's on the school. Because you can have a professor who's all about teaching a student on how to make a wheel, but if we're already beyond making a wheel, and it doesn't matter if the student's into it and the professor's into it, if the class is irrelevant, well, then it's on the school for designing a curriculum that's not relevant. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So going back to your original question, because I'm waxing poetic, but I really wanted to make the point that it's not all on the student, because I don't want it to make it sound like I'm blaming the student for anything here. We all have a portion of ownership here. Going back to your original question, I think was who should be owning this? Was that your original question? I'm sorry.
You know what? I don't even. I guess part of it's like the role that various different kind of stakeholders play.
Okay. The school is responsible for creating a curriculum, whether they have to modify it every semester, every year, every decade, whatever, that ensures the graduate is prepared properly for what that role or for what that degree is going to be doing in the professional world. That student needs to be relevant the day they graduate. They don't need to graduate and go, crap, I need to go now spend more money on a professional certificate so I'm relevant. They need to be relevant on day one. That's the school's responsibility. The professor is responsible for their own continuing education,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can take that curriculum, whether it's one they design themselves or it's one that they're being handed, so that they can not only teach what's on paper, but that they can fill in the blanks. They can read between the lines. They can give the real life examples. This is where there's a substantial difference between an adjunct and a full-time professor. I'm going to go there in a second. And the student needs to be open-minded enough to not just read the book and download whatever they find online and just do the exercises, but go to the extra lectures, read everything that's online, but also be able to say, maybe there's something extra here that the professor wants to tell me, because 2 plus 2 does in fact equal 4. But what can the number 4 be used for, if that means
Sure,
something?
sure. Like what's the
4 wheels on a car. That's great. But what else can I use the number 4 for? Oh, there's 4 sides to a house. Well, can there be 3? Can there be 8? Things like that. Now, where I'm going with this, and this is a great way how not to get a full-time job at university. This happened to me. I was talking, this happened at Columbia College, okay? I was applying for a full-time role back during COVID. And I was asked, Jason, what can you bring to this business school that we don't already have? It's an arrogant as hell response, but I said, relevance. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I know you can see where it's going. I said, well, you all have been working in the school, teaching and doing research for a number of years. Yes, I've been practicing in my field for a number of years, and I can take what's going on in the real world and bring it to the classroom. And they just looked at me. I said, when was the last time you won $1 million deal? Nothing. When was the last time you were downsized due to a corporate takeover? When was the last time you won or lost a job for one reason or another? Nobody
Yeah.
had an answer.
Yeah.
So I don't spend my
It's a
life in a
different,
library.
yeah. It's a different, it's a
So I did not get the job, and you know, I don't know if it's because of ego, because there's a lot of ego in higher education. Some of the listeners may say that Smallheer here's got an ego, but the point is, there's a difference between the adjunct educator who works in the field in which they teach every day, and the one who spends their whole life in the library doing research about what they teach instead of working in the field in which they teach. So when I teach branding, I work in branding every day. Before our conversation, I was working at a television station working with clients on how to grow their business. So when I talk to my students, I'm going to talk to them tonight about branding, and I'm going to use the real life examples that I use with my current clients in the classroom. Jane or John Q full time only can talk about what they researched in the library. So no disrespect to the abundance of the 40, 50, 60 years of research they've been doing, or to the service they've given to their university for that many decades, but there's a substantial difference.
but you know, I think you also like, I think that there's a place for both. It just looks different. And I
There
think that,
is.
and I think
There
just
absolutely is.
owning what like those things are. Oh, and I guess because going back to kind of the core topic of our discussion today is around like the hidden cost of cheap education. Do you find that different types of, let's call it like Ivy League universities versus like your community colleges or your value school opportunities, do you find that they go about like even say like their staffing? Because like I think we're going to talk about full-time and adjunct professors anyway. But so do you find that like there's like a difference in rigor or like what they're looking for or accepting or asking of the people that go in to teach those students?
Okay. I think there is a difference in rigor depending on, quote, the brand of the school. Here's an example, okay? When we talked about Harvard, Harvard's got this preconceived, we're Harvard, we're supposed to be tough as nails. Again, I went to Southern Illinois. Some of the toughest classes I ever had there, we had Pulitzer Prize winners as my professors, okay?
Yeah.
They were both extremely difficult, okay? I like to think that I am a professor that expects a certain amount of, what's the word? I want to say I'm a rigorous professor, but again, I also give out a lot of A's because my response to my students, this is advertising. It's not my job to tell you if you're right or wrong. Your customers tell you if you're right or wrong. If they buy, you're doing it right. All right. Doesn't matter if your textbook says you're right or wrong. I could say you're wrong and your customers buy it from you. I'm wrong. Okay. What I think the difference between your community college and some of your University of Phoenix and things like that, I think what it really comes down to is what your professors are going to bring to the classroom. Because, like I said, there are some professors, and I've talked to some who have left their jobs at the University of Phoenix or the Southern New Hampshires or some of these other schools because they don't get to hold their students accountable to a certain level of rigor, and they have to put their name on that student. And if I'm holding a student accountable to, again, I'm just going to use you, Jack, as an example. If I have to put my name on you as an MBA and you're not citing work, you're phoning it in, and I can't sleep well at night noting because you're just phoning in the work and based on the rubric I am given, and I have no ability to really teach you, coach you, and develop you, there's a school of ethics that a lot of professors have. And if we can't sleep well at night because we're just going through the motions and pushing you through the system, that causes some professors to leave or seek employment elsewhere because the school is more focused on get them in and move them out as opposed to get them in, teach them, prepare them, grow that flower, develop a root system, and let that plant blossom. My mother used to tell me all the time that I was her little tomato plant. And every time I made a big life decision that was wrong, she would say, sometimes I put you out into the wild before you're ready. And she was right. I made a ton of mistakes when I was younger. But damn it, I don't want to take one of these MBA candidates and say, go fly, and them not be ready to, research on how to find the CEO of Starbucks to, present a case to if they don't even know how to look up where somebody is. I was talking to one of my employees today. I'm trying to sell $1 million sponsorship, and the response I got is, I don't know who to reach out to. And I'm going, oh, well, okay, I guess we're just not going to sell anything then, right? We'll tell that to the CEO. That doesn't work that way in the real world. You don't take no for an answer. You find solutions to complex problems. And there's a lot of professors who have students that just say, well, I couldn't find the answer. Oh, well, okay, I guess that end of the world is nigh. Here we come. We couldn't find the answer. We find solutions to problems.
Yeah, like so I I'm tracking what you're saying. I don't want to villainize, if anything, the opportunity for cheap education, but because I do feel like it provides, like, I think depending on
It
who's the
does. It is
ultimate person,
necessary.
yeah, it is. It's like it provides an opportunity for the people that, want to take advantage of it, whatever that mean, either, socioeconomic status, like they can't pay more or choose to not pay more, or whatever it may be. I like that these options are available. I don't think every single option available is a good one, but I do. I mean, I'm going to call it like the democratization of information. It's like I was recently actually looking at like a Coursera, and like, this is what, like, for, okay, so
There's some
Illinois,
good stuff there.
University of Illinois, you can get an MBA through Coursera, and I forgot how much it was, like $12,000 or whatever. But I think it's ultimately like, this is not one of those things that I perceive that, like, you're not going to get like one-on-one treatment and everything. Like, the onus is on you, like, as the student, to actually do the work. It is a heavy lift though too. So like, I think there's pros and cons to the cheap education kind of avenues that are available. Like, I don't know, like, at the end of the day.
There are some students that function very well in that environment, and it's perfect for them. Again, there are some students who are like, well, how are you going to know if I cheat? And maybe that's for them. But again, those are the students who I am afraid for, because they're going to go through, they're just going to cruise through a program. Congratulations, I am now Jane or John Smith, MBA. And when they are handed a project that their company needs that MBA for, the results I'm fearful for. They may surprise me. Don't get me
Can I ask,
wrong.
have
People
you ever,
surprise me all the time.
no, no, fair enough. Have you ever said that to somebody? I'm just curious personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have. I don't get a response, but
Well,
it's the
I think,
truth.
like, yeah, I mean, if somebody said it to me, I'd be like deer in headlights. I'm like, oh,
Because I mean, that's my Hail Mary pass. I've got nothing to lose at that point.
sure,
One of two things will happen, okay? And again, it's kind of like taking a 2x4 to somebody's face. They'll either catch the ball and realize that Jason is making me uncomfortable now, but it's going to work out in the long run,
sure,
or they're just going to give me the kind of finger, if you will. They're going to do what they want, and when it doesn't work out, whether they remember I told them so or not, I'm going to, at least, it sounds self-serving, I at least did my due diligence and told them so. Because if I didn't tell them so, then I'm
yeah.
not doing them the
Yeah,
service
you're
that
like, you're
my
heading into a brick
responsibility says I
wall, and this
should.
is going to be a problem at some point, and you don't even realize it because you haven't been in the
Right.
working world. Gosh, yeah.
They don't.
Have you?
They haven't been. And I go ahead.
No, no. I guess because, like, I'm just thinking like some success, like, can, I think there's obviously plenty of things we can gripe upon, but like, can we talk about like some success stories and like what you've seen, like people kind of really rise to the occasion, like cheap education or not?
Yeah. I just finished a term. I had 30 students in my class. And again, with every term, like I say, finished a term. I taught for two different schools this past term, but one of my students resonated with me because she was late with all of her work. And through her first 3 weeks, she was missing 2/3 of her work, and her grade was suffering tremendously. Um, and I was sending her notes saying, hey, you're doing great, but your work being so late is causing you to suffer. And at the MBA level, anything below a 75, at least at this school, is considered failing. Said, if you want to talk about it, let's. So I get an email back from her, and she says, hey, I'd like to get on your calendar, and let's talk about this. Now, I don't willingly give out my cell phone number because that opens the door to a whole lot of problems. So I prefer to have a online, a Zoom, a Teams, even a FaceTime conversation. So we have a online conversation. And she explains to me what's going on. And she says, hey, I'm, working at a retail environment during the day. And at night, I'm taking this class, but it's inspired me to start my own business. She says, but actually, my daughter and I have started a salon of sorts up in the Northeast, and I've started taking what you're learning. Because in my first video for the class, I recorded videos every week, and I taught them, it's a branding class, and how you can use the branding piece to not only use for the simulation we're doing in class, but how you can use it to brand yourself for finding a job.
Hmm.
But she's taking what we're doing and she's taking it week by week and putting it into her business model. And she says, I'm using this every week to build my business, and it's pushing me behind. And I said, so let me get this straight.
Oh
You're
my God.
actually using this to run your new business while you're working in retail with and you've got a 18-year-old daughter living at home. She goes, yes. I said, normally look, I understand life gets in the way because these are adults. I
Yeah.
said, my number one ask when students are running behind is talk to me. Because when a student doesn't talk to me, all I've got is the thing in the back of my head saying I've heard them all. I said, okay, you just earned yourself a pass for the semester. Can you get your work turned in within a week? Yes, I can do that. Perfect, no problem. But here's my ask. I need you to give me a weekly update on how this works out for your business every week.
Yes.
And she
Cool.
says, absolutely. So every week she does her assignment, but she sends me pictures. She sends me, I don't ask for them, but she's sending me head count through the door. She's showing me her cash receipts, her sales, and my eyes are just big. And I'm going, oh
That
my
is
gosh.
so
So, of course, my
exciting
ego,
though.
my head is
Yeah.
inflated out to here. And I'm going, oh my God. This is a woman who, on paper, you're going, this is somebody who just wants to phone it in. I'm going, they just, now again, the work she turns in is exemplary. Her work is fantastic, but it's always a week late.
Yeah.
But then I see what she's doing, and I said, great, but just show me how it's working for you in the real world. So she's doing
Yeah.
now twice the work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the course, she just was over the moon. 80% of the students that go in there bust their hump
No, no, no.
and
She's the
do the
20%,
thing.
right? She's the 20%.
She's the 20%, excuse me, that make
Yeah.
me absolutely go, and makes me sleep well at night.
Oh God, yeah.
And she's fantastic. So that's one of the success stories. And there's others. There are
Yeah.
other
No,
success
that's a
stories.
really good
But
one. I love it. I love it.
she's,
So like when at least for somebody like making that transition from like high school into college, or let's even say like not even college, even I feel like even to like technical schools, I think that there's a lot of things for people to consider when whatever that investment looks like from money as well as time. So like if you were to like you're behind the curtain, like you know how it all works and everything, and you've got if you've done it, so like what would if somebody's looking to like further their education, what do you think that they should look for?
first of all, I think they need to look beyond school and figure out what their end goal is. And I'm not talking about money. Money is the result. Money will always come. You can always earn more of it. You can shoot, money can come from the lottery. By that logic, just play the lottery enough, eventually something will hit, right? Figure out what your end goal is and then work backwards. Okay. If your end goal is owning a business, leading a team, is it flying an airplane, being a doctor? What is that end goal? That's where you need to start. I didn't get my master's degree till I was in the workforce for probably 15, 18 years. Not because I didn't want one, I didn't know what it was I wanted to do. Again, that's just me. And to your point, you're saying you're just kind of thinking about it now. There
Yeah,
are
but you
some
know what?
people who
I
go bang,
there's
bang, bang.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of that recently where there's like like, and again, the schools are in for making some money and everything, but it's like they're churning it out the kids immediately from their undergrad into a grad program because I don't know, it's easier or whatever.
But
But this
why?
No, I don't get it. And I'm personally not aligned for it because I do question the value of going immediately from undergrad with having frankly no real world experiences to take application from like the various different learnings because like
Right.
there's a gap there. It's like and MBA or even like any sort of master's program, from my perspective, is not a continuation of your bachelor's. It's you took your bachelor's, real world application, then if anything, continue your education. But teach their own at the end.
Right. I mean, again, medicine maybe, but for most folks, again, that's just my opinion. Unless you're going to be a professional educator, I don't see the real reason to go right into a graduate program unless you've got some real world experience. Even if you knew what you wanted to do. My undergraduate degree was in journalism, print journalism. I was convinced there was going to be a newspaper machine on every corner. Yeah, good thing I didn't get that master's degree in print journalism, huh? You know? So
I do
once I
want to
figured out, go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was gonna say I do want to interject because I've heard a number of people. It's been said to me when I was younger too. It's like, oh, think about where you want to go, but it's like, okay, think about where you want to go, but like, and what? So like, if there is a student or a young person, like I guess, and let me know if you have anything to add to this. I found after years and years, like what that really meant was, potential, like say you want to start your own business, like you can relatively easily go look on LinkedIn. You can find various different people that have started their own businesses, and you can literally back out like what their career
Sure.
path was. Maybe they immediately did that. Maybe they jumped into it after a number of years in whatever industry they were, and then like they kind of went out and did some consulting. So I think that like I've heard, I feel like there's a lot of, it's a little fluffy and everything, but people talk about like do like a 5, 10 year, 20 plan, but it's like it's very basically, all right, 20 years from now maybe you want this, okay, 10 years from now, like maybe to get to that 20, like you want to get be at least at a certain point, but then for those next 5 years at least, early career, like there's going to be a clear delineated career path to get to where you're going to go, like get into some space, like you come in as an assistant coordinator or whatever. And I'm thinking a little
Right.
bit more from a marketing standpoint, but like you can back out like whatever that career path is, and you have plenty of different examples, and I think LinkedIn is a really great
Absolutely.
resource for that.
Well, spend some time scraping your knees, stubbing your toes, tasting the entree to see if you even like it.
Right.
Because you're right. With all the content that's out there, you can go on LinkedIn, you can watch stuff on YouTube, you can do the Coursera's. There's an abundance of content out there. Now, getting a formal education, and I'm not just saying this because I work in the field, there's a lot that you can gain from it. There's also a lot you can gain by just doing this. And again, there's people that I follow on YouTube, and there's people that are watch on YouTube, and there's a lot of stuff that I really like, but I can't say that there's anything that I did not learn through a formal education that didn't steer me down the right path. So when I got my master's degree, for example, corporate finance, I got a B in. And if somebody said, hey, go to the television station now and do all of our books, could I do them? Yes. Will I enjoy it? No. Am I going to learn how to do that on YouTube? Absolutely not. Am I going to learn how to do that by following somebody on LinkedIn? No. If I owned my own business, am I going to learn how to do the books myself? No. They're going to say, hire somebody on Fiverr to do it for you. You need to know how to do your books.
Sure, yeah.
If you don't hire somebody, that's how you get screwed. So you need to know how to do your stuff. So whether you get a certificate or
But
something, you
also
need to have a basic understanding.
yes, basic understanding and basic knowledge. I mean, so for example, like I mean, I just think project management, but like I've built out plenty of schedules and everything for whatever initiative I'm working on. Recently somebody's like, oh, like I personally like building out an Excel and everything, make dependencies and everything, but like
Right.
I always forget how to turn those Excel schedules actually into a Gantt chart. You better believe I found a great YouTube video on how to actually do that and how to
God
make it
bless
look
YouTube.
so, oh my, but my, it's like there is so much great information out there. So it's like I think your education, continuing education, gets you to a point and everything. And then, like, I mean, kind of the joke too is like I think for coding, it's like you're not writing your own code every single time. It's like you're utilizing like bits and pieces. So the ability, and like this goes back to kind of this whole conversation around citations as well, and your frustration around that, the ability to find good information and and audit it for that, and in fact is good information, I think is a really great skill set. And I think to your point, like that is a great framework from school. And if you, it really just comes down to like what you make of it at the end of the day. It's like, do you apply yourself, like cheap or not education? Like you're going to have a different set of circumstances. There are going to be different types of professors, different methodology. You call it a
Sure, there are.
rubrics, and of which, to be quite honest, I mean, I understand like in context what that means. And I guess like let me ask you this, Jason, for like moving forward, at least like cheap education, what would you like to come from it? Like, are you kind of just anti cheap education, or you just want to be explicit around the cost of going down that path?
I want, all in, I don't have a problem with education costing little money. There's a difference between something being economical and something being cheap. When I hear the word cheap, I think about something falling apart. Again, we think of something that we bought on Wish or Temu. There's some good stuff that you can find on Temu on occasion, right? There's a difference, though, between being economical and cheap. If I find an education that is economical and I get tremendous value, meaning what I get supersedes what I give up, that's tremendous value. Putting on my marketing professor hat again here, that works for me. And if what I get is even better, that it prepares me to enter the workforce so that on day one I am super prepared and I don't have to spend the first year of my life going, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, I don't know what I'm
What to
doing.
get
And
myself
that
into?
happens in some places. Yeah, right. Then that's okay. But what I see happening a lot of the time is schools are so focused on being the business.
Jason, you're a wealth of knowledge. We've already gone long. Where can people find you? Is there anything you want to pitch?
Nothing I want to pitch, but if you want to chat with me or if you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. There's only one Jason Smallheer. My last name is spelled Smallheer. That's probably the best place. I have a website, themarketingprofessor.net. I'm there. I'm not there very often, but I should probably be there more often. So themarketingprofessor.net or Jason Smallheer on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Join the Idea Citizen LinkedIn group and share this episode with a friend.